on this episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists.
But as I was going through the Masters of Public Health, I also began to realize the reason why so many public health initiatives fail is because the advocates for public health don't understand business. And if you don't understand the money story, it will never succeed. If we created this tiered model where it was normalized to go from hygienists up to dentists, you would have so much less animosity when you get to conversations at state levels, because dentists and dental hygienists wouldn't see themselves as operating different silos. They would be different practitioners along an educational pathway. And that's what I want to change. I want to stop this animosity between different dental providers and have us come together for concrete solutions that benefits the public and patients and can work with the different economic factors we have right now to give a good outcome to all involved.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, episode number 450. I'm your host, Andrew Johnston, and thank you so much for being with us this week. On the show today, we have Derik Sven. He's a hygienist that has it's just one of the most unique pathways of his profession ever, where he went from lab tech to a dental hygienist to an EFTA, and we catch up with him, and he lets us know kind of what he's up to now, which is incredibly fascinating. He moved all the way across the country. Derik's one of those people that he just doesn't seem to sit still very long. He's always doing something, working on multiple things at the same time. And he has some really big plans for the dental profession. But you have to listen to this episode to be able to find out what those things are. I'm not going to tell you what those are right here on the intro. And then next week, we have another great episode featuring the one, the only Dr. Emily Bogie. Bogie recently went to the International Federation of Dental Hygienists Symposium in Seoul, South Korea. She also went to Dublin a couple years back, and she is a huge international traveler when it comes to dental-related things. One of the unique things, in my opinion, of what she does is just not only does she go and visit all these cool places, but she really tries to pack in as many experiences, the local experiences, every time she goes to a new place. And that's kind of what we're talking about in that episode. She's one of the best that I've ever seen at doing something like that. So don't miss the episode next week. Make sure you come back. And I think that's it for today. Short intro. Special thanks to Erica Flatteau for co-hosting this episode that was recorded at RDH Under One Roof. And here is the interview with Derik.
A tale of two hygienists.
All right, listeners, welcome into the interview portion of the podcast. Today we're joined by Derik. Derik, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Derik, you and I have known each other from a distance, even though we live in the same state for quite some time. Did I tell you Erica lives in Tacoma?
I did not know that.
Tacoma area.
Yeah. I'm in Tacoma. Where were you originally from?
So mostly on the east side.
Okay.
But last portion of the time I was living in Washington, I was in downtown Seattle, but that was for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I was in like the Carnation Redmond area.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So anyway, so we've known each other from like social media, kind of from a distance a little bit. Was it Pima? You're a Pima graduate?
Pima grad, proud Pima grad.
You should be proud. I don't want to like talk you up too much because I want you to try and be humble on this episode, but you are one of the ones that said that made me look at Pima differently, because I think Pima didn't have necessarily a great reputation earlier on. And because it is, there's multiple Pima locations depending on where you're at. It kind of felt more like what we think of sometimes with corporate dentistry. It's like, okay, it's going to be
corporate college.
Let's push them through. Let's not give them, whatever. But the graduates, yourself included, it really opened my eyes. And then now, shout out to Pima. Like, that's some of my favorite graduates, even to this day. Like, so capable. They're workforce ready, highly intelligent. I love it. So thank you for doing that. So what we're doing today, the whole point of today is I want to know more about your career.
Okay.
I want to know about your whole lifestyle path, because it is one of the most interesting things that this is the jumping off point for me. I knew you as a recent grad hygienist, and then you had said something about going back to be an FDA just so you can do final impressions.
I did say that.
That's what you told that. So that's what I'm like, all right, this dude's different.
Wow.
So, okay. So, but we'll get, like, we're jumping ahead in the story. We'll get to that point in a little bit. So what I know about you is you're a lab tech first before you went to hygiene school.
Yes.
Is that where the story begins?
No, actually, I did something prior to that. So growing up, I was in a very conservative family, and I personally wanted to become a medical doctor. That was my dream.
Nice.
My parents wanted me to be a Catholic priest. So very different ideas there. And they gave me a choice. They said that you can either go into the seminary or you can go into the laboratory. Those are your options. I'm like, okay. And being the rebel that I was, I chose to go into the seminary. So I spent a few years as a teenager, studying ethics, epistemology, logic, psychology, all the different, studies a typical seminary would go through.
Sure.
Realized that was not going to be my career path. There's numerous reasons why, but I ended up leaving that and going into the laboratory where I worked with my dad for about 8 years. That was right about 2006, and the industry took a tremendous change right about that time. The Great Recession started, gold prices skyrocketed, and so the traditional methods of making dental restorations were no longer a viable option. Gold crowns, PFMs, which were heavily focused on gold prices, were now no longer an option for dentists to use based on profit returns. So there was this race to the bottom, so to speak, where dentists started shipping out their impressions out to places like China, Mexico, India, places where they could get the restorations done cheaper. And there was this cycle for dental laboratories to try to undercut each other to see who could do it the cheapest. And so there's no money in that field. So my dad's business model that he had been using since the 1980s was no longer applicable. And I saw the writing on the wall and said, love you all, but I need to do something different.
Yeah.
So by that time, I was financially savvy enough to buy my own house at that time. I had enough equity to put myself through dental hygiene school. Didn't have enough money, obviously, to go put myself in medical school or dental school. And I started looking at the dental hygiene schools in the area, and Pima, as you know, had just been opened.
Hey.
So I went there, introduced myself to the director. She had a very progressive mindset of how to accept candidates, and she was looking at me more as a human being and what my experiences were and what I could bring to the university.
I love that.
So they actually interviewed you personally before you were accepted? It wasn't just numbers on a sheet of paper?
Wait, did you not have an interview?
It was a very personal interview of like what my life experiences were. And I opened up to her, told her, what my background was. And she just looked at me and she's like, yeah, I think you'd be a really good addition to this school. She's not Melissa McCannell. This was a different director prior to her. Melissa is an amazing human being.
Sure.
I consider myself a close friend of hers still. But yes, that Pima had a very different way of looking at students.
That is so unique, though. Like that is so I had an interview, but it wasn't so much. It was more like a meet and greet interview. It wasn't. No,
this was
you're
like
explaining.
I want to know your background, how you perceive people, what are your interactions with the public and patients going to be like?
Could you imagine if all hygiene schools did that? What better qualified candidates they would have? It would be maybe not the all 4.0 students. So they might be a 3.7 student, but who is maybe had some life experiences that'll help them be a better clinician, a better advocate for their patients, et cetera, et cetera. So I love that they did that. Holy crap. Yeah.
And people that are going to make it through the program, stay with the program. The program will be more successful when they see that passion and drive in the person.
Exactly.
By meeting them. Yeah.
And another cool thing Pima did is my prerequisites had to be repeated because they weren't accredited. And the focus, I did all my prerequisites during my first 2 semesters. So I was taking like 8 courses at a time, but taking your courses from an instructor who knows what you're going to use those for makes a huge difference in how those are applied. Psychology course, for instance, I had this professor, she was hired to teach psychology during the courses, which she knew we were going to be treating patients for the rest of our lives. So she made it highly focused on motivational interviewing, which was an absolute godsend to me. It completely changed the way that I talk to patients, how I communicate with them.
Oh my gosh.
And it totally changed the trajectory of my career. My lecture at ADHA next week is actually focused on that entire subject.
Really?
Yes.
I might get you on next week for an episode, by the way. So I want to clarify something because maybe I didn't understand. So you had to redo the prereqs.
Yes.
But was the educator only teaching dental hygiene, or was this all medical focused?
So she was a psychology professor. The Pima had hired for that semester to teach any students that didn't have their psychology courses up to date.
Of the dental hygiene students only?
Just the dental hygiene students.
See, that's the disconnect, I think, is we're doing our generals over here with everybody else.
And you have nothing to apply it to.
And it's just basic knowledge. Oh,
they did the same thing with chemistry and biochemistry. They made, instead of just talking about bonds, they were talking about the covalent bonds and how they were actually applicable to the bonding agents we would use with restorative. So there was an actual substantive application.
This is why you guys are so good. Okay. No, I get it. Okay. It's all starting to come full circle now. So you're going through school, you're graduating.
Yep.
Tell me your first real hygiene position.
So my first hygiene job was just at a general dental practice in Redmond. I loved working with the dentist there. She was a Kois dentist, so she's a very, very smart lady. And she taught me some of the best applications for periodontal therapy. But one of the things I quickly learned, and this is where I learned I had a special gift for motivational interviewing, is she was really good clinically, but she didn't know how to talk to patients. She had been raised outside the U.S. in a very paternalistic talk-down approach.
Sure.
And I had a very collaborative approach with the patients. And at my 90-day review, she brought me into her office and she's given me high marks on time management and accomplishment of all these different things. And then she looked at me, she goes, "But there's one thing I need you to explain to me." And I was like, "Oh, okay, what I do wrong?" And she goes, "Why are you seeing all of these patients I've been treating for years? You've seen them one time and they're signing up for treatments they've been resisting me on for months." And I said, "Well, because I use motivational interviewing. Don't you all do that?" And she's like, she just this blank stare on her face. I was like, okay. And so this psychology course I took at Pima actually is very, very substantial and it has a real effect. Shortly thereafter, I had a different office approach me and they asked me to take on more managerial positions in their practice.
Oh.
And I had decided to go ahead and do my bachelor's completion through Pima as well, but it was in administration.
Okay.
So I got to use them as sort of my practicum project in running this practice and reinventing how they use it. And I used motivational interviewing as the foundational method for taking the practice from just being, very reactive to being proactive. And I took the business from the low 2 millions is what they were producing. And by the time I left, their higher number was just shy of 5. And we had trimmed down the practice. We had made it very successful. It was a real amazing success story. But that was when I finished with that practice was right when COVID happened. And being part of the business side of dentistry is really exciting to someone like me who had been in a family-run business and where I know numbers and whatnot. But I also got to see a lot of the dark side of the industry.
Okay.
I got to see how sometimes different consulting groups didn't really have a good patient focus, and it really made me second-guess my career.
Wow.
The dentist I'd been working with at the time, he had sent me literally all over the country working with different consulting groups in different areas to see what their best practices were, what their methods were. And so when COVID happened, I pulled back and said, I really want to focus on the heart of dentistry. And so I went back and I got my master's in public health. And that really helped me to refocus what I wanted to do, taking care of people, bringing them to a healthy position in life. But as I was going through the master's in public health, I also began to realize the reason why so many public health initiatives fail is because the advocates for public health don't understand business. And if you don't understand the money story, it will never succeed. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do a double master's. I'm going to start my MBA right now too. So I started overlapping the courses. And it was actually super helpful because I could see both ends of the story.
Absolutely.
And then, like a complete crazy person, as I was coming to the end of those degrees, I also realized there was a big gap in the understanding here, and that was law. Not understanding the legal implications of all three of these had a huge impact on why they weren't going forward or why advocacy measures weren't happening.
Oh.
So I applied for a Juris Master's in Healthcare Law, and I started doing that as well. So I'm now on the East Coast to kind of throw another curveball into this. I just picked up my bags and I decided to move east. Washington State really became
I like
quite...
it, by the way, just the way I tell the story is I moved to Florida, then you moved to the East Coast because you want to be closer to me. I'm just saying that's really what happened. But I guess this whole Juris Master's stuff have worked, I guess.
So anyways, I'm on the East Coast, and I will tell you, I had an interview with the American Academy of Oral Systemic Health, and we had this discussion. East Coast, West Coast styles of dentistry.
Very.
Way different.
Phenomenally different. It's like two different worlds.
Yeah.
And they treat hygienists so differently from East Coast to West Coast.
Yes.
You have respect and pretty significant autonomy in the Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
They treat you like you're a maid in the kitchen barefoot and don't do anything unless we tell you what to do.
Oh my gosh, can we talk about that some more?
Humiliating. In Virginia, for example, they have this stupid statute on the book that if you were going to do general supervision, the dentist has to do some Victorian era permission slip that has to go into the patient chart before you're allowed to see a patient when they're not in the office. I mean, it has such roots in sexism. It's really appalling to see some of these things they do on the East Coast. But anyways, I was particularly frustrated one day with a dentist who is being really disrespectful. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to see what doctoral programs are out there. Because, not that having a doctor before your name is going to significantly change your trajectory, but the East Coast, there's actually a trend out there where they do give people more respect in academia and just generally in medical practice if you do have a doctor in front of your name. That does kind of change the way they talk. West Coast, that doesn't really happen as much. East Coast, it's a different mentality. So I'm going through Google, and George Washington University, which is a pretty prestigious university in DC, they had a doctoral program for mid-level providers. And I typed in I was literally just looking for general information on the subject, but I hit the wrong button. And it sent in the application, and they called me back within 5 minutes.
Wow.
And they wanted to actually set up an interview. And I was like, well, maybe this is just like a message that I need to do this.
This is supposed to happen.
So I went ahead and did it, and they accepted me. They're like, we want you in the program right now. You're like going to be the first person in dentistry to go through our program because it's relatively new. They generally open up to nurses and physical therapists. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to do this. And the whole focus of the doctoral program at George Washington is they want you to come up with an idea, plan to change your industry. And I'm like, I have that plan.
They're asking the right guy.
You happen to pick the right guy. The void that exists in dental hygiene right now, where there is a articulable path to go from a hygienist to a dentist, really does not exist.
Right.
And there is such an easy way to do this. If you take CODA accreditation standards, there really is no reason why, as long as dental therapy is legal in a state, why you could not develop a tiered model where you go from an associate's in dental hygiene, a bachelor's in dental therapy, a master's in advanced dental therapy, which is actually a key point there, because a lot of advocacy issues with dental therapy is dentists get really upset when dental therapists are allowed to do stuff like simple extractions and partial pulpotomies and whatnot. If you include the scopes of practice at tiered levels there, where you give the more onerous components of dental therapy to the master's level, you can finish off with a doctorate program, which would give a doctorate of dental sciences, but it would incorporate the full curricula going from hygiene to dentist and give a 2-year segmented pathway there.
Yeah.
And I was going over this with my instructors at the university, said, this is a really good idea. They said, in nursing, we do this, and it's actually beneficial for the universities because they will have contracts with local community colleges, and they will bring in students from their nursing programs. The universities love it because they have this giant pool of potential people they can bring into the next level. It's going to make things more cost effective because you're going to have options for more mid-level providers to be coming in and treating patients. Dental insurances right now, there was a news article that came out, I think last year, like 30% of dentists said they were leaving dental insurances. That's going to create a massive public health issue.
Yeah.
And people, they rely on dental insurance to get basic dental care. Having more mid-level providers who can treat them would be huge. Australia, we saw this at RDH To 2 years, I think it was a year ago, 2 years ago. They emancipated dental hygienists and dental therapists. They now have direct access to the public. If we created this tiered model where it was normalized to go from hygienists up to dentists, you would have so much less animosity when you get to conversations at state levels, because dentists and dental hygienists wouldn't see themselves as operating different silos. They would be different practitioners along an educational pathway. And that's what I want to change. I want to stop this animosity between different dental providers and have us come together for concrete solutions that benefits the public and patients and can work with the different economic factors we have right now to give a good outcome to all involved.
I love the idealism of all of this, but there are already this is happening like in the UK, and like it's like it's like you're on a train and you just get off at your stop and then you can get back on the train and keep going if you want to, and get off when you're ready and keep going. And it also helps, I think, you think about different like points in your life. You've had like multiple points in your life. Like, I'm ready for this, but I don't have enough money to be a dentist right now.
Yes.
All right, let me work and save. Let me learn on the job on this part, be really good at this so I can respect the people when I'm the next level. Go up. I would love to say that you're right, that the animosity is going to go away, but we've seen what happens in the UK. The animosity still doesn't go away. There's still this,
it would take like 10, 20 years, but if as more dentists start from that level up,
because they have to go through that pathway.
They're going to feel what it's like to be a preventive.
They're going to understand what we
have
do.
A preventive foundation,
Yes.
so they do understand what we do, and they're going to have that little bug in the back of their mind saying, maybe it's not time for me to prep this tooth just yet. I need to be more of a preventive mindset.
Dude, would you see that like everyone has to go through this pathway, or would you say that this is one way to go, and then there will stop like the standard dentist?
I think it'll start as one way to go, but I think in the long run, people will see the wisdom behind having that approach where there is a preventive foundation. Because right now, I have seen so many dentists who just point blank do not understand periodontal disease at all. I have a really funny story we have time for it about a dentist I ran into in the South. So when I first got down to Richmond, I was doing a lot of temping, and I came into this office. It's the end of the day. I'm auditing the charts. The last patient of the day, he's coming in and he's got no teeth on the maxillary, and he's got 8 teeth on the bottom, and they're all treatment planned for extractions.
Ew.
And I'm scheduled to do a prophy. Of course, obviously there's a problem here. So I go and check the X-rays, and sure enough, he's got like maybe 1/3 of the roots left in his bone.
Oh man,
massive amounts of calculus. This is easily a stage 4 periodontal case, and so. The office manager, who by now is kind of a friend of mine, I said, this is not a prophy, and if this is what I'm being asked to do, I won't be doing it. I said, it's not happening.
Yeah.
So she said, I understand. She goes, just bring the patient back when he comes in, reassess, and then go talk with the doctor and try to, figure out what's going on here. So patient comes in, and this is the South, of course. The guy comes in, he's kind of rugged and suntan, and comes in with his Southern twang, and he goes, well, I on my way here, some of my teeth fell out. And he's like, literally has a little bit of blood trickling down the side of his face. And he's got a few of his teeth in his hand. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So I was like, sir, could you just come on back to the operatory with me? And I sat him down in the chair. I said, so tell me a little bit about what you think we're doing today. He goes, well, I'm here to have my teeth cleaned up so I can get a partial fitted for them. I said, your treatment plan says all your teeth are supposed to be extracted for a denture. And he goes, no, the dentist wants to save a few of the teeth in the back so we can make her on a partial. I was like, okay. So I said, just give me a second. I'm going to go talk to the dentist in the back. I pulled the dentist out of the operatory. I said, what is going on here? And he goes, yeah, I'm going to save a couple of these teeth. Just go ahead and prophy them. I said, this is stage 4 perio. I said, this is 2 quads of SRP. If you want me to treat the patient, you're going to renegotiate the treatment plan, or I'm not treating the patient. And his words to me were, prophy, SRP, it's all semantics.
Oh my goodness. It's all semantics.
And I see that over and over and over again in the South. They don't understand periodontal disease. And because they don't understand it and they treat it that way, even their insurances, like in Washington State, I never had to see an insurance policy that didn't cover SRP, at least at a reasonably high percentage, and then have at least 3 or 4 perio maintenances per year. Even if they weren't covered fully, they were there. There are policies here in the South that don't even acknowledge the 4,000 codes.
No.
It's not there. It literally says 2 prophies, and that's it.
Yep.
And even if they have SRP coverage, I have never seen a policy that covers more than 2. And then after 2 years, they won't cover it at all. You either have to redo an SRP to get those 2 if you want to, or it's just, they all become prophy mills.
Well, and I don't want to say that like insurance is dictating treatment, but at that point, there's some unscrupulous acting on the insurance companies, misrepresenting what they are doing for the patient, saying, no, you have dental insurance, don't worry, but it's not. That's the scope and coverage that we're expecting.
And then it compounds the problem because you have these dentists who will literally say stuff like, prophy, SRP, it's all semantics.
Yeah.
And they believe that. And this is culture that you deal with in the South.
So the thing is, like, and I don't want to like alienate and piss off a lot of our listeners because there's a lot of people from Florida and Texas and California, but I guess that's not really South. But like, we have a majority of our patients or of our listeners come from that area. But the thing I keep saying on the podcast that I swear no one believes me, and they're just like, Andrew, you're an elitist, you're whatever. There are such regional differences.
Oh my God, yes.
That no one wants to acknowledge, because here's the thing. If you're from the South, you only know the South.
Right.
Until you go to Wisconsin even. Like, I wouldn't even want to say Washington, where we're all from, but like you go to Maine, it's different. I mean, they're just a whole different mentality about what dental hygiene is. And it's not the dental hygienist's fault, right? Because this is doctor-led. Mm-hmm. This is the dentist and dental boards and legislation that's enacted, really kind of keeping the hygienist down and not allowing them to see the full scope of what they could be doing. And so I don't want to like just blame hygienists, but I'm telling you, hygienists, it's different in different areas. We're not all the same.
And I don't mean to sound like I'm just generalizing from one office. I tempt a lot around those areas. There was another practice I went into, and there was like a morning huddle that morning. And the dentist made some comment like he was going to go in and take care of the hygienist block. And I looked at the other hygienist and said, what? I said, you have local anesthesia practice here. What is he doing? And he go, oh yeah, he doesn't believe that hygienists are sufficiently educated to give blocks. He's rescinded our scope in this practice. And I said, you're kidding me. He said, nope. He said, he won't allow you to give a block. And then I talked on a little further. And he's like, and yeah, also he won't allow you to do sealants. He doesn't believe you have enough education to give a sealant. Like that, I mean, by that time my mind was going to explode. I'm a restorative hygienist from Washington State. Like I can place fillings. Yeah. And former CDT, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so backward.
Yeah, it is. I had a similar thing. So I was in Florida, right? So I went down. Now, I'm also the director of hygiene. I'm in charge of 50 offices, right? So they're a little bit behind, and doctor she was a new grad, couldn't keep up. I've told this story on the podcast before, so I apologize, listeners, but she was a new grad, and in Florida, you have to get permission to do local anesthesia at a time. And so I was like, Doc, this is already treatment plan, blah, blah, blah. I do have my certificate down there, right? Mm-hmm. In Washington, it's kind of all encompassing, but here you have to have certificates and things. I was like, I do have my certificate, blah, blah, blah. And she's just like, I don't know if I trust you to do this. And I'm like, no offense, doctor, but like I've done way more than you've done. Mm-hmm. And I'm also the director, so I'm in charge of all these hygienists. So I'm teaching them how to do things. I wasn't qualified to do that, and I shouldn't be in this position. And by the way, I used to teach local anesthesia courses. So it's like,
but you did have to go and ask permission.
Come on, doc. Well, I don't even mind asking permission, right? I think there's a respect factor that we can all acknowledge that it's like, okay, this is the law that we have to do this, so let's go do that. But then you tell me no, or you're hesitant on me doing it when you're just brand new out of school. I'm like, you're practicing on these patients yourself. Like, come on.
Yeah. Oh,
so it's just different.
You're not kidding. I was just talking to a new grad in the DC metro area, and he was making some comment about going to a weekend course to learn about implants. And I said, I'm sorry, what? And he said, yeah, I'm going to go learn about implants. I said, you're a dentist here. How many times did you place implants in dental school? And he said, oh, none. I said, but you're legally allowed to place whatever. You could place an all-on-4 here right now if you wanted to. He goes, yeah, but you've never done one.
Yeah, under any sort of supervision or
none.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's only 3 states in the U.S. that actually require dentists to do residencies out of dental school. And so you have these new grads that are coming out. They've literally never done some of the procedures they are legally allowed to do.
Yeah.
And the public doesn't know that.
Yeah.
No, they don't. Like I've asked a couple patients on occasion, I said, what would you say if you knew that your dentist had never done a procedure?
Yeah.
They're legally allowed to do. They're like, you're kidding me. They're not like medical doctors where they have to have a residency. Like,
wow.
Nope. Only in 3 states they have to do that.
Yeah.
Well, and as we're trying to have a seat at the table with the medical doctors, our standards have to include the residency. That just, if we want to.
It should.
Yes.
I mean, they have very significant clinical and didactic hours hygienists have to complete to become hygienists.
Right.
If you look at CODA accreditations, it literally says the director can take any holistic approach they want. That is bizarre.
Look, not to leave us on a cliffhanger, but look, we are out of time, unfortunately, Derek. If people wanted to reach out to you, ask you for more questions, maybe see if you're next place you're lecturing or whatever, where can they find you?
Dentistry.com is my page. I have handles on YouTube, Facebook, my website. I am transitioning my speaker packet to my website, QuintDent. That is short for Quintessence Dental Practice Consulting, where I'm going to be putting more of my speaker stuff and consulting engagements on. But for right now, you can find me at dentistrywithderek.com. Derek is spelled Derik.
So we'll make sure that's in the show notes. Appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.